I want to talk a little college football playoff because Matty Whitener, he wanted my take on Oregon, Ohio State, Cincinnati. Just wondering. So the rankings come out, the second week of rankings come out the other day on Tuesday. Georgia, after destroying Mizzou, although not covering, but still just destroying the Tigers. And we're going to talk Mizzou with Andrew Kaufman coming up at 1:45. So Georgia looks to be far and away the best team in college football. But because before the show, we were talking about this, and Matty Whitener brought up a good point, and I agree with this. Georgia this year looks so dang good. They look better than everybody else. Even Alabama. Alabama struggled as an almost 30-point favorite, just beat LSU, one-score game. Kirby Smart and Georgia, they haven't won a national championship. What, Georgia hasn't won since 1980?
Yeah,
since Herschel Walker.
Yeah.
So Kirby Smart still needs to win the big one. And go back to the national championship game, the Tua game, when they had a nice lead there.
Mm-hmm.
So Kirby Smart, although right now they look unbeatable, he still has to finish the deal.
Yeah, I mean, you got to get over the line, and that's going to haunt him. I mean, the same way that before him it haunted Mark Richt. You know, I mean, it's just there's something about that job that it's just not getting over the hump. And, you know, when I look at this, you know, you got Georgia number 1, you've got Bama at 2, Oregon, Ohio State, Cincinnati, Michigan. You know, some of that stuff's going to work itself out. I still don't care about that O next to him, though, because it just still feels like something here is going to fall apart.
Yeah, it's weird because this year I feel like it's Georgia than everybody else. So from that standpoint, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but I think there's probably 6 to 7 teams that all have a legit claim, whereas some years there's a solid 4.
Mm-hmm.
Some years there's a solid 3, and 2 teams have a great say, and somebody's left out at 5.
Right.
This year, beyond Georgia, whoever's number 5, okay, they're going to have a case, especially if it's Cincinnati, but I don't think any of those teams are these great type of teams that potentially have a chance to actually win the national championship. Like, if you're Notre Dame, what I think is interesting, and I totally get why, like right now, if you watched Oregon play and you watched Ohio State play, and I know Ohio State struggled a bit at Nebraska, but I think if you go the last 5 weeks or so, most folks would say Ohio State has looked better than Oregon. But guess what? Oregon went into Columbus and beat them. So obviously, Oregon should be ranked ahead of Ohio State as they are. They're both 8-1. What's funny to me, though, is just go a couple more spots down. Michigan is 6. Michigan State is 7. They literally played 2 weeks ago, and Michigan State won that game. They're so similar. Their record, their stats, and Michigan's ahead of Michigan State. That doesn't make sense to me, especially when they just played within the last, 12 days.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. And then I think you got the big albatrosses out there, too, where you've got OU hanging out undefeated at 8. You know, and that's, how do you reconcile that? Because usually you lean on the thing that happens with, you know, Cincinnati that's outside of those, you know, the big power conferences and whatnot that you traditionally think about. But there's no explanation for where Oklahoma's at. So I see some of these teams are going to get beat by each other. They'll weed out. Oklahoma could continue to win out and get there, and then at least you have an interesting top 5 to talk about before you get to the 4.
And I think what's interesting about Oklahoma, you could also spin this to Ohio State. So look at Oklahoma's games. Remember the first game? They struggled to beat Tulane. All right? They don't have a great schedule. Texas isn't fantastic. All their games, many of them have been really close. But then you have 2 or 3 big games left at number 13 Baylor coming up this week. You have Bedlam, Oklahoma State. So they're going to have a chance not only to remain undefeated, but rack up some really strong wins. What I like about what the committee does, and this is not just because it's Ohio State, I like the fact that they're not going to punish you that much if you schedule a really difficult game, like a top 10 Oregon team, and you lose that game by 1 possession. Because you know what? Ohio State could easily have scheduled Akron or University of Toledo or Bowling Green, and that record would look 9-0, and they would have won that game by 55 points. But as college football fans, you want Ohio State to play Oregon. You want Notre Dame to play Oklahoma. You want these marquee non-conference games because that's what's fun about the sport to me. And then also, if one team beats the other by 3, 4, 6, 7 points, you shouldn't penalize the other team that much because they played a really close game and they had the balls to schedule it and they lost by one possession. You shouldn't really get destroyed in the rankings for that.
Well, do they?
No. And that's the way it should be. That's why. But the argument is going to be, oh, look, Oklahoma's undefeated, but they are from a big conference.
Yeah.
Cincinnati's undefeated. My point is more so like, do you really think that Cincinnati can beat Alabama? Really? Come on now.
No.
Now, Alabama may end up 11-1 and going to the SEC championship game. And Cincinnati's record is going to look real pretty at 12-0.
Yep.
Do you really think Cincinnati's better than Alabama? Do you really think Cincinnati could beat Ohio State on a neutral field? Don't get me wrong. I want the Cincinnatis of the world to get a shot, which is why you have to expand the playoff, because the fun of the NCAA tournament is the Cinderellas. One of the most fun football games in the college ranks I've ever seen was that Boise State game way back in the day when Boise State shocked the world. They pulled out every trick play. You got to give the Cinderellas, and it's not like Cincinnati's the little engine that could, but still, if you go undefeated from a non-Power 5 and you beat a Notre Dame and you schedule an Indiana, if that team goes undefeated, they got to have a shot. And I don't care if they even get to a playoff with 8 teams or 12 and they lose by 45 points to Alabama. You have to give that team a shot.
I agree. I don't like those donor games, man.
No, I think you've got to incentivize competition. I mean, when people see that it's not gonna bottom you out by taking a 3-5 point loss or something early in the season because you've got time to come back on the other side and prove who you are, that's the best outcome you can have. Sometimes you got to play who's in front of you. Cincinnati is playing who's in front of them. And if you do that, sometimes the cards will stack up the way things are constructed right now, where you will get a chance to take that shot and become that Boise State a few years ago. Or, what you saw, if you flip it over to basketball, what Gonzaga ended up doing. Yep. And they ended up becoming a completely different type of program because of some of those wins. But I think that to the point that you made, Charlie, we owe it to this big picture in the seasons like this to open this thing up some more. There'll never be a number. If you get it to 8, somebody will complain about being 9. If you take it to 16, somebody will complain about being 17. Yeah. But 8 at least gives you a legitimate sample size so you don't have to decide to leave people out.
And that's where, to me, it's also about fairness. And it's not just fairness about giving the little guy a shot, because most years they probably won't win that game, and most years they won't even be in that game, to be fair. To me, what's more fair is the fact that you want to crown who should be the best college football team as your national champion. And that's why in the NCAA tournament, nobody ever questions the champ, because you have to, through 3 consecutive weekends, win 6 straight games. Even if your draw falls favorably, you still have to go out there 6 straight times and win a game. And sometimes that's a 4 seed. That's a 5 seed. That could be an 8 seed. It's a team that also there's the fact you get hot at the right time. To me, what happens in football, though, is every once in a while, the 5th best team in the nation, now not this year, I don't think that's the case this year, but when you see that teams like Ohio State and Alabama have won the national championship from the 4 seed, that shows you that the 5 seed in some years could potentially win it all. Remember the first year. Ohio State won it. Remember the big argument that year was TCU. Who knows? If TCU got in, who can say that TCU couldn't have won it that year, right?
Yeah.
We never saw the game. But I think when you limit it to 4, in some years, I don't think that's the case this year, but in some years, that 5 team, that 6 team, they could be good enough to win 2 games or 3 games and win the whole thing.
And then in the big picture, too, what do? You open it up the fact for there to be even more money involved, even more games that are going to be featured, and you're going to also incentivize those big dog players that have got these NIL contracts to be able to stick around and stay in there and continue to compete, because now you're not in that picture that you've been in the last couple of years. You have guys that are like, I'm opting out. I'm done. I'm not going to play in the bowl game because I'm getting ready for the draft. No, you're still incentivizing people to play. Football has an excellent opportunity right now to really make itself be one of the models of what you can get out of a well-organized postseason.
Charlie Marlow Show, 590 The Fan, 590thefan.com. Get your text in, 855-282-8255. Matty Whitener, Cam Janssen, Jim here. Jim, I want to hear from you, okay, for several reasons.
Hey, Jim.
Hey, guys.
We got to know what's coming up.
I think we got plenty of plenty of talk with you.
Okay,
three,
but
yeah.
I'm asking you because you have an expertise. It's going to be the second day in a row. We just throw you so many compliments, Jim. We love you so much, okay?
Okay.
But also because we are the home of the Illini here.
Yes, we are.
And we're always playing all the coaches' shows and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of college football, Illinois, they're just that team this year that they play to their competition, and that's a good thing and a bad thing because you've knocked off a ranked Minnesota. You've knocked off a ranked Penn State. Both these games on the road. You beat Penn State when they were a top 10 team. You went into Minnesota. Now, these games aren't the prettiest, Jim. Illinois is grinding it out. Low-scoring games. But what do you think about year one with Brett Bielema? They're 4-6. You've had a couple great games. Overall, it's not fantastic. How would you evaluate his first year?
He's done a pretty good job of establishing what he wants to establish. They are what they're going to be, and that is run the football. Run the football. And when you think they're going to pass, they're going to run the football some more. I mean, that's really what it is right now. He's got to recruit to get some better talented players at some skill spots, but he's already got his identity. They've won 2 games against top 20 competition in his first season. I think it's been a very good season for him. Game that maybe they could have won was the game of Purdue. Game that I thought they could have pulled out was against Texas San Antonio, who we're finding out pretty good football team.
They're
right
really
now.
good.
Yeah, they're undefeated. So that's not an embarrassing loss to either one of those teams, but they were games that they could have won. And if they would have won one of those, they'd be within a game of being bowl eligible right now. So I think it's pretty good that what he's done so far.
That's why their record is so weird because you lose to Rutgers.
Another game that was
but
a nasty loss.
You beat Penn State, you beat Minnesota, you beat Nebraska, who just gave Ohio State a tough game. As you mentioned, you lose a close game to Texas San Antonio. They're undefeated, and Purdue just knocks off Michigan State. That's a 4-point loss. So you do have a couple games here that could really have swung, 4-6 to a 5-5 or a 6-4 season for Illinois. Before we take a break and we talk a little real estate with Lucy Fight from Lou Realty Group, Matty Whitener was saying he was getting punished on Sundays in the gambling world.
No.
This past Sunday, the dogs were barking big time, not just against the spread. We're talking big time double-digit wins from the underdogs. The Broncos, 10-point underdogs, going on the road to beat the Dallas Cowboys. And then my friends and I have been laughing so much about Urban Meyer because Urban Meyer, who 3 weeks ago was just, has he lost the locker room? Is he done? Is he going to lose his job? It was the ugliest, boring game ever. It was 9-6. But the Jaguars took down the team that right before that game, Jim, when you asked me, I said the Bills are my favorite to go to the Super Bowl. And I said the Cowboys are my favorite to go to the Super Bowl. And they both lost as freaking double-digit favorites.
So we can blame you and Peyton and Eli Manning.
Correct.
For this now. Okay, got it.
People are complaining about them, by the way.
About the curse?
Yeah, there's something. I mean, you can't satisfy anybody.
Is it the Eli double bird? Or?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of everything. It's like whatever. Like you have options then. Change the channel.
But I think the way they're kind of chirping them with love is they have now established a Madden curse type situation where so they have these guests on. They usually have 4 guests, 1 per quarter. And usually it's like 1 former player, NFL, 1 current, but it also be like a celebrity. It could be LeBron James. It could be what Jon Stewart was on the other day.
Yeah.
But of the current players, the players that come on the Manning cast the next week have lost every single game.
Yeah. So
something like 0-8 or 0-7.
So this is where I've gotten to at this point with my streak, my run here, is that I was watching the game on Monday, Bears and Steelers, and I immediately turned to ESPN2 to see if they were on, so I'd know who to pick against this week.
Yeah, it's easy.
Nice.
Can I ask you a question before you go?
Of course.
I know it's a little. Who's the 5-star recruit that went committed to Mizzou? What's his name?
Luther Burden.
Touchdown Luther.
What would you have done? Would you have gone to Mizzou
every time,
or would you have gone to Georgia?
In every version of life, I would have went to Mizzou.
No matter really.
Yeah.
Like in all honesty, like instead of going to the big boy, you'd go down to Mizzou.
If I was where he's at, I would have gone, and here's why: because of the NILs that are out there. He's got a buzz around him here. He's got a chance to earn big money. He's got an opportunity to really be a standout guy down there. I mean, if you want to compete, it's hard to say, no, I don't want to go to the number one team in the country.
Yeah.
But, boy, there's a lot that factors into it now for these guys to make individual
You don't
decisions.
think he's making money? He wouldn't make as much money in Florida if he's the man down there?
He might have been.
Georgia?
He might have been another guy down there, but he's the guy here.
Yeah. What if he's the guy there?
Well, you're going to get paid.
Right?
He's going to get paid no matter what in 3 years if he does that. So
I'm just curious. I was curious about that.
What did you guys think? This is kind of tied into what you just said. And I like the way that Eli Drinkwitz brought this up, but he got a little criticism, fairly, in my opinion. Dave Matter, who does a great job, beat writer for the Post-Dispatch, in the fact that you go and you lose to Georgia, and maybe some people don't care about this, and I can understand why fans will say, oh, you're talking about this because you're in the media. But they didn't make any offensive players available to the media, and this is after you got blasted by Georgia. We all get it. But what was the story of that game? The story of the game was that Connor Bazelak was injured, and your two young quarterbacks of the future, Tyler Macon from East St. Louis, true freshman, and Brady Cook from Chaminade, redshirt freshman, they both split time. Mm-hmm. So you got destroyed by Georgia. We get it. We all knew that was going to happen. But that was the story. That was the interest, to see how these young cats would do against one of the best defenses that we've seen the last 10 years, and also potentially who could be the next quarterback. Mm-hmm. Could it be Macon? Could it be Cook if Connor Bazelak continues to either be injured or struggles? And no players offensively were made available. And then Eli Drinkwitz came out this week, and he was very nice about it. But he said, basically, I don't like true freshmen to talk. I feel like they haven't earned that right. I've never liked that. John L. Smith at Michigan State did that years ago around a team I covered. I never liked it then. I even think now you shouldn't do that even more because of NIL. Mm-hmm. Some of these cats are getting paid to do interviews. Like the Volume Network, Colin Cowherd's podcast network, they have something like 7 or 8 different SEC players. One of them is Connor Bazelak, and they pay them something like, I don't know the number, whether it's $500 a week or something. But to do a quick 15, 20-minute interview, they pay for their appearances. So it's another way to make NIL money. And look, if 590 had the chance to get Luther Burden as a true freshman and he exclusively came on 590, that is probably something that would be worth it, even if you think journalistically. But that's kind of the way things are going. Mm-hmm. So if you're Eli Drinkwitz, especially if these kids are playing, especially if they're the quarterbacks, you got to let them talk.
I agree. They need to learn too. You can't. Now you're not going to talk to anybody, and then all of a sudden it's going to get thrown in your face 100 miles an hour. Like, you live and learn on how to present yourself after either a big win or their emotional loss, whatever the case is. And not to mention, their kids are starting to get paid now. No, I'm asking you questions, and you're going to answer them.
Yeah, I think it's important that if we're going to scrutinize, if we're going to scrutinize their play, and we're going to talk about what they do on the field, that at the very least you give them the opportunity to be able to speak to the decisions that they made. It's only fair.
And if you're a quarterback, though, you're also doing all kinds of interviews in high school.
Yeah,
right. Look,
no doubt.
I mean, Tyler Macon, I think I talked to him 2 times at East St. Louis. He was a 4-star recruit. He was a big-time recruit. Brady Cook, he was on our radio show. Remember? He was over at the Shack.
Oh, yeah.
After he signed his letter of intent. Yeah.
Oh.
He came over and he was sitting
sweetheart of a
at
guy.
the Shack on the radio with us.
We pumped his tires up the whole time.
No, he's a great kid. And they both are. But my point is, to think these quarterbacks especially haven't been doing a ton of interviews when you're a big-time recruit since you were 15, 16 years old. And to be fair, Eli Drinkwitz asked it in a nice way. Like he didn't say, "Hey, I have all the rules and I know everything." He said, "If you disagree with that, talk to me and we'll kind of walk through it." And I bet you he changes that, to be honest with you, because I bet you other media members will say similar things, especially when it's your quarterback who could be starting.
I know.
Right? I mean, Tyler Macon could be the quarterback.
I mean, how old is he anyway? 20?
Well, he's a true freshman. He's got to be probably 19,
20. Like, you're not that young.
Yeah, and here's the thing about it is we've had true freshmen win the Heisman. Would you go through an entire season without a Heisman Trophy winner?
Great point.
To people? No, come on. It's that day of holding guys back and saying, "Oh, we'll get you there when you've earned it." That's over. If you're willing to put the jersey on them, you're willing to, and they can earn in the position they're in, let them go out there and play.
What about that tennis player? Remember, she's like, "Oh, it's bad for my mental health and stuff like that." And you want to mental health stuff is a big deal, but you're also getting paid, and it's part of it.
Yeah,
it's part of it.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, but if the kid wants to talk, and I get it, I don't care that much, but if the woman doesn't want to talk and she said it really messes her up mentally, I'm not going to be a jerk and be like, oh, you have to talk. We saw similar things with Zach Greinke. Zach Greinke doesn't like to talk. He has social anxiety disorder. He left baseball back in the day.
Really?
And he says he just doesn't like those situations. So I get it. It's part of it. Sometimes it's collectively bargained for the pro sports, but also I'm not a jerk, or I don't care enough to be like, dude, you have to talk. Like, and if you're making it up, oh, I'm going to pretend I have social anxiety to not talk to the media. Okay, I'm sure there's a small percentage of people that will play that card.
Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you play that card if you don't want to? If you don't want to be, okay, yeah, I get it, but I think that's still part of it too. I don't know.
I want to be very careful about that because I think that it is a really important thing. It's a real thing. I just hope it doesn't become a dodgy thing where I don't want to deal with this.
Yeah.
Because hey, listen, I'll say it. I'm saying this. I'm questioning Ben Simmons, for example, how it became a thing all of a sudden when he's having issues of wanting to play in Philadelphia. Maybe it is real, and I'm completely being or whatever about it. But, let's not use it as a way to not do
exactly.
I think, though, with college football especially, I think it will really help recruiting, though. You know how kids are these days. Like, we're on the social medias. They're on all of them times a million. TikTok and Instagram and all that. And they can make money off that, right? And you will make NIL money off that. So that will help you get the next kid, by the way. If you're seeing Luther Burden out there talking, doing interviews, putting the interviews on whatever social media that he wants to put it out, if he's at Media Day talking, if he's on ESPN, he's going to put that all over the place. And all those other recruits, that stuff matters. You guys know this. When you see these cats go to different recruiting visits, what happens afterwards? They put out these ridiculous pictures of them with the uniforms, right? It looks awesome. They're flexing.
Yeah.
They put every different $1 million uniform and helmet on. They're doing the flexing. They're up against the Heisman Trophy. They're on the field. That stuff matters. Like, the marketing of it matters with kids. Otherwise, all these programs wouldn't do that.
No, I agree with that.
And an example for that, just let's keep it on with Luther Burden. 21.6 thousand followers on Instagram. I think he's ready for the pressure.
How many?
21.6 thousand. He's ready for the pressure of having a microphone in his
Yeah.
Well, I'm pretty sure.
He should be.
I was there at the Herbert Hoover Boys and Girls Club when he made his announcement. I think he was holding up his phone. I think he was live on Instagram while it was going on. Now,
he knows what he's doing.
So he's talking to the folks with a microphone, and he was holding his phone up. So I'm sure he was, and I don't really get into Instagram, but I'm sure he was Instagram living it somewhere to his 20,000 followers already.
You need to get on Instagram.
No, I'm on. I'm just, I'm not very prolific.
Yeah. It's Instagram's easy. Facebook's easy. Twitter's the one that...
Twitter takes a lot of work.
Twitter takes a lot of work.
And me and Twitter's fight is still ongoing.
I don't spell no good. And it ruins the tweet. Like, you could have the most sophisticated tweet ever, but if you misspell something...
Cam, you did that entire tweet with no vowels.
No, exactly. That tweet is, no value in that tweet anymore because of you misspelling a word.